Mom yelled, "Your kid took the missing $10,000 from the safe." Her voice cracked the room in half. Forks froze midair. The smell of roast chicken turned sour in my throat. Lauren didn't even blink. We saw him near it. She snapped her tone flat, certain. Mason just stood there, dirt still on his sneakers from the backyard, eyes wide like he couldn't breathe. I didn't argue. Didn't ask why they thought a child could steal what adults kept losing. I reached into my tote set, a small silver USB on the table, and said quietly, "Then let's see who really did." The night before that accusation, everything still looked normal, at least from the outside. My parents' house smelled like coffee and lemon cleaner, the kind of scent that pretends nothing bad ever happens here. Mom hummed while folding napkins. Dad checked the grill. Lauren scrolled through her phone, pretending to be bored. Keith sat beside her always with that lazy smirk, the kind that said he pitied everyone but himself. Mason was in the backyard drawing chalk planets on the patio. He's 11, quiet, the kind of kid who still asks before opening the fridge. After my divorce, we moved into a small rental a few streets away. I work freelance accounting jobs, barely enough to keep things steady. My parents started helping with groceries, tuition, small bills. I never asked, but I didn't refuse either. That help came with invisible strings, the kind Lauren could pull whenever she wanted. The first time money disappeared, it was $100 from Mom's wallet. She brushed it off, laughed about senior moments, but her eyes flicked around the room a little too long. The second time, $300 vanished from Dad's locked drawer. He said nothing, just checked the lock twice the next day. By the third time, $500 gone from Lauren's purse, the silence turned poisonous. She said she'd left her bag upstairs while changing the baby. Her eyes landed on me, then slid toward the window where Mason's shoes were lined up. She didn't say the words, but I heard them anyway. After that, Dad installed a safe in his office, one of those heavy fireproof ones, bolted to the wall behind a shelf. A keypad code only he, Mom, Lauren, and Keith knew. He told me over coffee, "I just want peace in this house again." I nodded. But peace isn't what happens when you build walls. Money kept vanishing, small amounts at first, then bigger. 2,000 gone one week, 10,000 the next. No broken locks, no footprints, just tension thick enough to taste. Mom started triple-checking her purse whenever Mason walked by. Lauren began whispering to Keith at the dinner table. Dad kept a record of every withdrawal, every bill. I kept my mouth shut and watched it all rot. When Mom laughed, it sounded rehearsed. When Lauren smiled, it felt like a dare. And Keith, he had started avoiding eye contact with everyone except the safe. I saw it in passing, the way his gaze lingered just a second too long on that office door. I told Dad what I'd seen. He didn't flinch. "Then it's time," he said. That same afternoon, we hid a motion camera inside a fake smoke detector angled right at the safe. Only he and I knew. He patted my shoulder before leaving for work. "If it's who I think it is," he said quietly, "I'll need proof, not guesses." I didn't realize how soon that proof would come, right before the whole family turned on my son. After Dad installed the camera, I thought things might settle. They didn't. The tension only learned how to whisper. At dinner, conversations died halfway through. Mom stared at her plate more than she ate. Lauren kept checking her phone like there was a script she needed to follow. Keith just kept drinking water, silent, twitchy, always near the office. A week later, $2,000 went missing. Another week, $10,000. Clean. No forced entry. Nothing but panic and blame floating in the air like smoke. Mom called a family meeting. The word family never sounded so cruel. We sat in the living room, lights too bright, silence too loud. She started softly, the way she always does before she strikes. "Someone's been taking money from the safe again." Then her eyes landed on Mason. "You were in there yesterday, weren't you?" Mason blinked, confused. Grandpa asked me to hand him his glasses." Lauren cut in before I could speak. "We saw him near it." Her tone matter-of-fact, confident, like a cop reading charges. The room tilted. For a second, I couldn't hear. My pulse was in my throat. Mason looked at me, waiting for me to defend him. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Every pair of eyes in that room was already convinced. Keith leaned back, crossed his arms, let it happen. That silence, his silence, was the confirmation everyone needed. Mason's hands shook. His voice cracked when he said I didn't take anything. Something inside me broke. It wasn't loud. It was the quiet kind of break, the one that rearranges you. I wanted to scream to throw the accusation back at them. Instead, I looked at my son and said, "Go get your sketchbook. Wait for me in the car." He obeyed without a sound. When the door closed behind him, the air felt colder. Mom exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for years. "I'm sorry, Ariana, but it keeps happening. What else are we supposed to think?" I smiled small and sharp. "Maybe the problem isn't who you think it is." Lauren scoffed. "You always twist things." Keith finally spoke. "If you've got something to say it." "Oh, I will," I said. "Soon." No one knew Dad had been watching from the hallway. Later that night, he knocked on my door and handed me the drive. "Footage is ready," he said. "It's all there." I stared at the little silver USB like it weighed 100 pounds. Proof. The thing everyone claimed to want, but no one was ready for. The next day, Mom called again. Her voice was colder this time. "Your kid took the missing 10,000. That was when I stopped explaining and started showing." That Sunday felt wrong from the start. The air was too still, like the house itself was waiting for something ugly. I brought Mason over for dinner because Dad insisted let's clear the air he'd said. But clarity isn't what my family does. We sat in the living room, the TV murmuring some cooking show no one was watching. The baby monitor hummed on the table beside Mom's coffee cup. Dad was in his office checking the safe again. Lauren scrolled, Keith stared at nothing. Mason sat beside me swinging his leg quiet. Then Mom said it. "Your kid took the missing $10,000 from the safe." The sound hit like glass shattering. I didn't even look at her at first. I just stared at Mason's face as the color drained from it. Lauren added calm and sure. "We saw him near it." That's how you know someone's been rehearsing their lie when they say it like a line they've practiced in the mirror. Keith didn't say a word. He kept his eyes on the TV like if he ignored us long enough, truth would skip him entirely. I didn't defend Mason, didn't beg. My hands moved before my mouth did. I reached into my tote, pulled out the small silver USB Dad had given me, and placed it right in the center of the coffee table. The click it made when it hit the wood was louder than anyone's voice. Mom frowned. "What's that footage?" I said. My voice sounded steady, almost too calm. "You wanted proof. Here it is." No one moved. "Play it," I told them. Dad appeared in the doorway, reading the tension before I even explained. He took the drive, disappeared into the office, and closed the door behind him. 5 minutes. That's how long it took. Lauren stood up halfway, then sat back down. Mom wrung her hands. Keith didn't breathe. Mason pressed against me, small and silent. When Dad came back, he didn't look at anyone. He just said, "You should all see this." We followed him into the office. The room smelled of dust and old carpet. The monitor glowed cold blue. The file name read October 21st, back to 14 a.m. The video played grainy, quiet timestamp blinking. The office door opened. A figure stepped in. Lauren gasped first. Keith. He moved like he'd done it before, walked straight to the safe, entered the code, opened its stuffed stacks of hundreds into a black duffel bag. Calm, efficient, like muscle memory. Mason's reflection flickered on the screen, his eyes huge, confused. Then Keith's face appeared in full view. Dad paused the frame. No one spoke. Keith's skin turned white. He turned and walked out the front door without a single word. And that's how silence can end a war louder than any scream. Keith didn't come home that night. He left without his jacket, without his car keys, without a single word of defense. The front door slammed once, and the echo stayed long after the sound was gone. Mom sat down on the couch and covered her mouth, muttering something about needing to check on the baby. Lauren didn't move. She just stood in front of the paused video like it might suddenly change if she stared hard enough. Dad stayed in the office, still and silent, one hand on the mouse. Mason pressed against my arm. "Mom, was that really Uncle Keith?" His voice was so small it broke something in me. "Yeah," I whispered. "It was." That night, nobody slept. The house felt stripped bare. You could hear the refrigerator hum, the wind through the vent, every creak of the floorboards, like the house itself was ashamed. The next morning, Keith's car was gone from the driveway. Lauren's face looked hollow, her eyes swollen from crying or not sleeping or both. She didn't look at me when I handed her a cup of coffee. She just said, "You didn't have to trap him like that." I almost laughed. "Trap him? You think I made him steal?" She flinched, like my words hurt more than the truth itself. I didn't know, she said. I thought maybe Mason? Because that was easier, I cut her off. Easier than believing the man you sleep next to could lie to all of us. She didn't answer. When Dad came downstairs, he carried printouts, freeze frames from the footage. Keith's tattoo visible on his wrist, the bills in his hands, the safe wide open. He laid them out like evidence in a courtroom. "No police," he said. "Not yet. But he's done. No more money. No more access." Mom whispered, "But he's family." Dad looked at her like she'd spoken another language. So was Mason. No one said anything after that. By noon, Lauren's debit card stopped working. When she checked her account, it was empty. Keith had cleaned it out before he vanished, checking savings, everything. She sank to the floor with her phone in her hands, whispering his name over and over, like maybe he'd hear her through the static. I didn't touch her. There was nothing left to say. That night she came into my room, eyes red, voice flat. "Show me all of it." I opened the laptop, played every file in silence. One by one, each theft, each night, same bag, same calm movements. She watched every second. Halfway through, her hand covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. When it ended, she just said, "He did it more than once." 3 times, I told her, that we know of. She stood and left without another word. Dad started changing the locks that same night. New bolts, new codes, even cameras on the porch. He called his lawyer the next morning. By evening, Keith's name was removed from every account, every document, every insurance policy, wiped clean. 2 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. No return address, just our last name scrawled across the front. Inside was a note written in Keith's messy handwriting. I tried. I really did. No apology, no explanation, just a motel receipt from Reno. Lauren read it once, folded it neatly, and said, "He's gone." For weeks, the house felt like a shell. Mom refused to talk about the video, pretending it never happened. Dad worked late, always on the phone. Mason barely spoke. I caught him sometimes standing in the hallway, staring at the locked office door. One night, Dad sat at the table with a glass of whiskey and said quietly, "When the money first started disappearing, I thought it might be him." I didn't say it out loud, but I thought it. I didn't respond. The truth already lived in the silence between us. Lauren moved back into her old room with the baby. She barely ate, barely talked. I thought maybe grief had swallowed her whole. Then one afternoon she came to me and said, "I want to see the footage again." I asked why. "Because I need to hate him properly this time," she said. We watched it again. She didn't cry. When it ended, she said, "He used us all." A few days later, she went to the bank and filed for divorce. Life didn't snap back to normal. It just changed shape. Mason started seeing a therapist. Mom baked too much bread. Dad fixed everything in sight, doors, fences, faucets, like fixing objects might fix us, too. Then just when the quiet started to feel real again, a car pulled into the driveway one night. Headlights cut across the curtains. Dad opened the door first. Keith stood there under the porch light, thin, pale, a duffel bag hanging off one shoulder. His face was drawn eyes, hollow. He didn't step inside. He just reached into his pocket, pulled out an envelope, and dropped it on the mat. He turned and walked away without a word. Inside the envelope were casino chips, pawn slips, crumpled receipts, and one slip that froze us all, a pawn ticket for Lauren's wedding ring, the one she'd hidden at the back of her closet after he left. He'd come back, into the house, into the baby's room. Somewhere, somehow, he'd slipped inside again. Lauren's knees gave out. That night, Dad had every lock replaced before sunrise. When the locksmith left the house was silent except for the ticking clock and the baby's faint breathing on the monitor. Mom whispered, "I don't want to hear his name again." No one disagreed. 2 months later, the call came from Reno. Keith had overdosed in a motel room. No ID, no wallet, no excuses left. We buried him quietly, no speeches, no flowers, just a cold wind and the sound of dirt falling over wood. Standing there beside the grave, Lauren said, "He stole everything that mattered, but at least Mason got the truth." And I realized she was right. That truth had cost us $10,000 and a family we could never rebuild the same way again. After the funeral, the house went quiet in a different way, like grief had drained the last bit of noise. No one mentioned Keith again. Mom stopped setting an extra plate at dinner. Dad barely looked at the chair where Keith used to sit. Even the baby seemed to sense the hush, sleeping longer, crying softer. Lauren moved through the days like a shadow until one morning she knocked on my door. Her hair was tied up, eyes tired but steady. Dad gave me a check, she said. $10,000. He said it's for Mason, for doubting him. She paused, swallowing hard. He said we all owe him more than that. I found Mason outside drawing on the patio again, this time bright chalk suns and rockets. When I handed him the check, he tilted his head. Did we win something, kind of, I said. We just got back what was ours. That night the family sat together for the first real dinner in months. The same roast chicken, the same table, but it felt lighter somehow. Lauren poured wine, Dad carved the meat, Mom even smiled. No one said Keith's name, but his absence finally felt like peace instead of punishment. After dessert, Lauren looked across the table. I told Mom it was Mason, she said quietly. I didn't see anything. I just needed to believe it wasn't him. Mason kept eating calm as ever. I knew, he said. Lauren's lip trembled. I'm sorry. He nodded like forgiveness was easy when you're 11. When the plates were cleared, I stood at the sink listening to their laughter drift through the house. It didn't sound perfect. It sounded real. Spring came quietly, the trees outside my parents' house blooming like they'd been waiting for us to notice again. Life didn't go back to what it was. It became something steadier, smaller, and honest. Lauren found work. Mason laughed more. Mom learned to listen before she spoke. Sometimes I still think about that night, the accusation, the silence, the proof. Justice didn't roar. It whispered one frame at a time until no one could deny it. If you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, tell me in the comments. You're not alone. Hit subscribe for more stories like this.
My name is Judy Whitaker, and I'm 29 years old. For most of my life, people have called me the stable one, the planner, the one who never loses her cool. I used to wear that title like a badge of honor until the man I loved turned it into an insult. Harry and I had been living together for almost a year and a half when I started noticing the quiet ways he was slipping away. It wasn't loud, not the dramatic kind of distance you can point to and say, that's when it happened. No, it crept in softly like the sound of the fridge humming at midnight, something you only hear when the rest of the world is still. He used to look at me like I was home, but lately his eyes carried that vacant glow of someone looking at a screen while their soul was somewhere else. I'd catch him scrolling through travel reels, couples laughing on dirt bikes in Bali, kissing under fireworks in Paris, cliff diving somewhere wild. The kind of curated chaos that looks romantic only until you realize no one's showing what happens after the camera cuts. He'd sigh quietly, not enough to invite a conversation, just enough for me to hear it. And that sigh, God, it was heavier than any argument we'd ever had. I thought maybe he was stressed. Work, family life, it could be anything. So I started trying harder. Making his favorite dinners after my own 12-hour IT shifts, planning small date nights, leaving little notes on the counter. But every gesture landed flat like a song he'd already grown tired of hearing. One night while we were watching a movie, Harry's phone buzzed. He smiled at the screen, smiled and locked it before I could see the name. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be that girlfriend. But something about the way his thumb hovered over the message icon burned itself into my memory. Then came the little things. He started working out later than usual, coming home smelling like someone else's perfume, not strong, but faint enough to make me doubt myself. He started dressing differently. He changed his hair. And one evening, while we were sitting on the balcony drinking wine, he mentioned her name for the first time. Haley. She was wild, he said with a laugh, eyes glazed with nostalgia. We used to take road trips with no plans. Just pack and go. She drove me insane, but, God, she had this fire. I didn't ask who brought her up. I just sat there sipping my wine, pretending my stomach hadn't just twisted into knots. He looked at me after a moment, maybe expecting jealousy, maybe hoping for it. But I didn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, I smiled and said softly, sometimes fire burns everything it touches. He laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. From that night on, Haley's ghost was everywhere in his stories, his playlists, even his dreams. One morning, he mumbled her name in his sleep. I froze, watching the man beside me whisper another woman's name like a prayer. That's when I realized I wasn't competing with a person. I was competing with his nostalgia, with the adrenaline rush of chaos disguised as love. Still, I held on. Because that's what I do. I hold things together even when they're already broken. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. Harry came home early, threw his keys on the counter, and walked straight to our bedroom. He didn't kiss me hello, didn't even ask how my day was. When I followed him in there, it was on the bed, a suitcase, half open, half packed. Going somewhere, I asked, my voice steady, even though my hands weren't. He didn't look guilty. He didn't even look surprised. Yeah, he said, folding a t-shirt. Just a trip. I need to clear my head. With who, I asked quietly. He hesitated for just a second too long. Haley, he finally said. The air left my lungs. Your ex. He rolled his eyes like I was being unreasonable. She invited me. It's just a week. We're adults, Judy. You always talk about trust, so trust me. I stood there staring at him, at the man I thought I knew. You're really going on vacation with your ex because you're bored. He sighed, dropping the shirt. You don't get it. Everything with you is so predictable. Same food, same schedule, same weekends. You're safe, Judy. Too safe. That word hit like a slap. Too safe. I wanted to scream, to throw something to remind him who was there when his car broke down, when his father was in the hospital, when his paycheck bounced and I covered rent. But instead I took a breath. Then go, I said softly. He blinked, caught off guard. Wait, that's it. I nodded. You're chasing chaos, Harry. I won't compete with your need to feel alive. Go find whatever it is you think you're missing. He opened his mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to apologize, but I didn't stay to hear it. I turned and walked out of the room before my voice could crack. That night I slept on the couch. In the morning, I heard the sound of his suitcase wheels rolling across the floor, then the front door closing. No goodbye, no I'll call you, just silence. I didn't cry. I didn't chase him through the airport. I didn't text or call or post anything online to prove I was fine. Instead, I changed the locks. When the locksmith left, I stood in the middle of our apartment, and looked around. The space felt foreign. His coffee mug still sat on the counter. His toothbrush leaned against mine like they were still a pair. The fridge hummed with leftover echoes of him. That's when it hit me. Not anger, not grief, but an eerie calm. The kind of calm you don't trust at first because it feels like silence after a storm. Harry wanted chaos. He left it behind with me. And I was just starting to realize how peaceful that could be. The first night without Harry, I didn't sleep. Not because I missed him, at least not in the way you might think. It was the silence that kept me awake. The kind that hums against your ribs and makes you realize how much noise love used to make even when it was unhappy. I sat on the couch until sunrise, staring at the half-empty bookshelf we used to fill together. His favorite novels were gone, but the ones I'd bought him, and he never opened, still sat there untouched. It felt poetic somehow. He took the chaos and left the calm behind. For 2 days I tried to convince myself he'd realize what he'd done, that he'd text call or maybe even show up at the door apologizing, embarrassed. But deep down, I knew better. Men like Harry don't return because they regret hurting you. They return when the person they ran to stops feeding their fantasy. By day 3, I stopped checking my phone. I canceled his access to the Wi-Fi, logged him out of my streaming accounts, and changed every password. The apartment was mine again. Quiet, steady, dull, and mercifully mine. On the 4th day, the first message came in. Harry, hey, so I guess you changed the locks. That's a little extreme, don't you think? I stared at the screen for a long moment, then deleted the message. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window. The city outside pulsed with life cars, laughter, neon signs flickering across buildings. Somewhere out there, Harry was probably sitting on a beach with Haley drinking cocktails and convincing himself he'd made the right choice. Let him. The next morning, 2 more texts appeared. Harry, Judy, be serious. I still have clothes there. We need to talk. Don't be immature about this. Immature. That word made me laugh, a sharp, bitter sound that startled even me. I'd been the adult the entire time, paying bills, cooking meals, holding the weight of his moods when he couldn't even hold eye contact. Now I was the immature one because I'd refused to be humiliated twice. I didn't reply. A day later, a voicemail came through. I listened only once. Okay, I don't know what your problem is, but you can't just ghost me. You're not some petty little girl. Be an adult and answer the phone, Judy. I replayed that line in my head. Be an adult. Funny how people call you childish when you stop letting them get away with things. I saved that voicemail not to share, not to prove anything, but as a small reminder of who he really was when he wasn't trying to charm me. The following week, I heard through mutual friends that his healing trip had ended early. Apparently, the dream vacation with Haley imploded around day 3. They'd been drinking at the resort bar when Haley accused him of being emotionally dull. He retaliated by calling her a drama addict, and by midnight, they'd had a shouting match in front of strangers. She left him in the hotel lobby with her suitcase and blocked his number. I didn't laugh. I didn't even feel vindicated. What I felt was something colder clarity. I had been his emotional home, the one he came to when he needed to be safe, fed, and believed in. Haley had been his fire, the chaos he romanticized when life felt too quiet. He thought he could keep both worlds without consequence. He was wrong. A few days later, he tried again. Harry, look, I know things got messy, but what we had was good. You can't just pretend I don't exist. Harry, minutes later, Haley's not who I thought she was. I made a mistake. But you made me feel safe, Judy. Doesn't that count for something? I almost replied. I'll admit it. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Yes, it counts for something, but not enough. But I stopped myself, because the truth was it had counted for everything and he had thrown it away. Instead, I packed the small box I'd kept on the kitchen counter, his phone charger, his old hoodie, a couple of framed photos he hadn't taken when he left, and mailed it to his mother's house. No note, no explanation. Just a clean ending, wrapped in brown tape. 3 days later, he sent one last message. Harry, you think you're punishing me, but you're just hurting yourself. You'll never find someone who understands you like I did. I chose you when I could have had anyone. You're throwing that away over one mistake. That was the moment my patience finally snapped. One mistake. One mistake is forgetting an anniversary. One mistake is saying something cruel in anger and apologizing for it. But what he did wasn't one mistake, it was a pattern. Months of emotional neglect, quiet disrespect, and finally betrayal disguised as self-discovery. I stared at the message until it blurred, then deleted the entire thread. That night, for the first time since he left, I slept deeply. No tossing, no pacing, no checking the phone. Just silence. The next morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about him once during the night, not even in my dreams. And that's when it clicked. Peace doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It just slips into your life quietly like morning light through the blinds. From then on, I started rebuilding my days. I went to the gym again. Started working from the office twice a week instead of staying home. I filled the spaces he left behind with small, gentle things, new plants on the windowsill, candles that smelled like cedar, and honey playlists that didn't remind me of him. I even smiled more, not because I was healed yet, but because I was finally becoming someone new. Someone who didn't need to be understood by a man who couldn't even understand himself. What I didn't know then was that Harry wasn't done. When men like him lose control of your emotions, they come back to see if they still have the power to twist them. And soon he'd try again. Silence has a strange way of becoming addictive. At first it felt suffocating, like standing in an empty church after everyone's gone home, hearing your own heartbeat echo off the walls. But then after a while, I started craving it. The apartment was quieter now. No more Spotify playlists blaring at 1 a.m. No more passive-aggressive sighs when I worked late. No more clinking of Harry's spoon against his coffee mug, the rhythm that once felt like routine, now replaced by nothing but calm air. The first few mornings were the hardest. I'd wake up half expecting to hear the shower running or smell his awful instant coffee. But instead I heard birds. Just birds. Outside the window, beyond the noise of everything he'd taken with him. I began filling the silence with small, steady rituals, watering plants before work, cooking breakfast for one without feeling sorry for myself, opening the curtains and letting the light flood in instead of hiding behind them like I used to when he'd sleep till noon. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was peace. And peace, I realized, doesn't always come wrapped in joy. Sometimes it just means the absence of noise. Then the text started changing tone. Harry, Judy, this is ridiculous. We can talk like adults. Harry, hours later. I don't deserve this. You're overreacting. Harry, 2 days later. Fine, stay in your perfect little world. You'll regret it. Every message carried less confidence than the last, like his ego was slowly starving. I didn't answer any of them. Not because I was trying to punish him, because I finally realized I didn't owe him closure. A few days later, I received another voicemail. You think ignoring me makes you strong? It just proves you're cold. You always were. You build walls and call them boundaries. He was angry now, bitter, and that told me everything I needed to know. See, the version of me Harry loved wasn't real. He loved control disguised as calm. He mistook my patience for permission, and now that I wasn't playing along, he had no idea how to function. I saved that voicemail too. Not out of spite, but because I wanted to remember the sound of his unraveling. Then came the news I didn't expect but couldn't pretend not to enjoy. A mutual friend, Jenna, texted me one night. "You probably don't care, but..." Harry and Haley split up. It was bad. She kicked him out of her apartment last week. I just replied, "Thanks for letting me know." Apparently, the grand adventure ended in a drunken argument about loyalty. He accused her of being manipulative. She accused him of being spineless. They both cried, broke a lamp, and she threw his clothes off the balcony. Part of me wanted to laugh, but mostly I felt something better detached. I used to believe karma would come in fireworks. Turns out it arrives quietly in the form of a text message you read while sipping tea wrapped in your own peace. Still, I wasn't completely healed. There were nights when loneliness crept in, especially on Fridays. The kind of nights we used to order Thai food and watch terrible reality shows while pretending everything was fine. Now it was just me, a single plate, and the muted glow of my TV. Sometimes I'd catch myself scrolling through his old messages not to miss him, but to remind myself what I survived. His tone, his words, the way he could make me doubt my worth with one sigh. That was the real poison, not the cheating. The way he made me feel boring for being emotionally consistent. One Sunday morning, as I sat at my desk finishing a project, a knock came at the door. My stomach tightened. No one had said they were visiting. When I looked through the peephole, nothing. Just an envelope taped to the door. It wasn't handwritten, but I knew the printout inside was from him. Typed. Polite. Pretending to be rational. "I know you're still angry, but you don't have to erase me. We shared a home memories love. You're not cold, Judy. You're just scared. I still believe in what we had." I stared at it for a long minute before tearing it into strips and tossing it into the trash. Not even rage this time, just exhaustion. Because that's the thing about people like Harry, they don't come back for you. They come back for their version of you, the one who tolerated everything, without calling it out. Later that week, I went out with some coworkers for dinner. The restaurant was loud, full of laughter and wine glasses clinking. I hadn't been out like that in months. Someone made a joke, and I laughed so hard my chest actually hurt. It hit me then, this was what healing sounded like. Not soft piano music and scented candles, but loud laughter in a crowded room, life coming back uninvited and messy. That night, as I walked home, the city lights reflected on the wet pavement, and I thought about something my therapist once said years ago. When you stop chasing the person who hurt you, you finally give your future a chance to catch up. For the first time, I understood it. Because somewhere in that future, though, I didn't know it yet, someone new was already waiting. Someone who would see my calm not as a flaw, but as home. But before that peace could arrive, there was one more ghost I had to face. Harry wasn't done haunting me yet, not by a long shot. It had been almost a month since Harry left, and for the first time, the word alone didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a place quiet, clean, and mine. I'd stopped checking my phone every few minutes. The silence no longer scared me. It soothed me. I woke up early, cooked breakfast for myself, even bought a small bouquet of white lilies every Sunday just to see something beautiful on the kitchen table. But of course, peace has a way of drawing chaos back in. It started with another text this time, one that didn't sound angry. "Harry, I know I messed up. I just want to talk. Please, Judy, just once." I ignored it. Then a day later. "Harry, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. I was stupid. You made me feel safe. Haley never cared like you did." The word safe made me flinch. Funny how it used to sound like love, but now tasted like pity. That night, I sat at my desk watching the city lights flicker against my window. My computer pinged with a work email, and I almost laughed at the contrast, someone asking about a project deadline, while my ex tried to resurrect a relationship he buried himself. I didn't reply to him. Instead, I packed a small box of his leftover things, a leather bracelet he never wore, 2 old t-shirts, a broken watch he'd promised to fix. I sealed it and mailed it to his mother's house. No note, no closure speech, just weight removed from my life. 3 days later, another message lit up my phone. "Harry, I don't get it. You think ignoring me makes you strong? You're just being heartless." I deleted it. But that night, lying in bed, I realized something. His words didn't sting anymore. They didn't crawl under my skin the way they used to. They just passed through me. I wasn't numb, I was free. And maybe the universe decided to reward me for that peace, because a week later I met Arthur. It happened at a mutual friend's game night. I almost didn't go crowds, and small talk weren't my thing, but Jenna begged me to at least act like a functioning adult again, so I went. Arthur was sitting on the couch quietly observing the chaos. Not loud, not trying to impress anyone, just there, present, grounded. When I sat beside him, he smiled politely and said, "You look like someone who's pretending to have fun." I laughed, caught off guard. That obvious, only to people who do the same thing he said, sipping his drink. We ended up talking for hours about work, about family, about how exhausting it is to always be the responsible one. There was no sparkly movie magic moment, no grand flirtation, just comfort, familiarity, like I'd met someone who spoke the same emotional language. At the end of the night, he asked for my number. I hesitated, then gave it, not because I was ready, but because for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel guarded. Meanwhile, Harry's messages were getting desperate. "Harry, you'll never find someone like me. You're making a mistake. I made one, but you can fix this." There it was again, I made one. That phrase, the subtle rewriting of history to make betrayal sound like an accident. So I wrote something I hadn't planned to. I didn't send it to him, I just wrote it in my notes app. "No, Harry, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. And I finally made mine." I deleted it afterward, but it was enough. The words didn't need to reach him, they needed to reach me. Over the next few weeks, Arthur and I started seeing each other more. Dinners, walks, coffee after work. He never rushed things, never filled the air with false promises. When I told him about Harry, just a little, not everything, he didn't pity me. He just nodded and said, "Sounds like he mistook stability for boredom. Happens more than people admit." It was such a simple sentence, but it felt like a balm. With Arthur, everything was still. No chaos, no guessing games, just presence. And I realized something painful. Harry had made me believe that peace meant stagnation. But peace in its purest form is growth without fear. A few days later, I received one final message from Harry. "Harry, you think you're over me, but you'll never find anyone who understands you like I did. You're punishing yourself, Judy." I smiled when I read it because for once he was wrong. I wasn't punishing myself, I was protecting myself. That same evening, I met Arthur for dinner at a small rooftop place. The air smelled like rain and jasmine, and for a second I thought of Harry, his absence, his silence. But then Arthur said something that pulled me right back to the present. "You look peaceful, like you finally exhaled." I looked at him and realized he was right. I had exhaled finally after months of holding my breath. And somewhere deep inside me, a quiet certainty took root. Harry's regret wasn't my responsibility, it was his mirror. He was finally seeing what he'd lost, and I was finally seeing what I'd never needed. It had been 2 months since Harry's last message, and by then, he had become little more than a background noise in my life, a name that no longer made my pulse quicken. Arthur and I were moving slowly, deliberately. No fireworks, no chaos, just a quiet kind of connection that made me feel like breathing was finally easy again. So when Jenna invited me to her engagement party, I almost said no. I wasn't in the mood for small talk and smiling faces pretending everything was perfect. But Arthur convinced me otherwise. "Go," he said with that calm grin of his. "Besides, I want to meet your friends. Let me be your emotional support guy." I laughed. "You have no idea what you're signing up for." But he did, and he went anyway. The party was held at a rooftop bar downtown with fairy lights strung between metal beams and soft music spilling from hidden speakers. People mingled with champagne glasses in hand, laughter echoing through the night air. And then I saw him, Harry, standing near the bar alone. No Haley, no friends, just him wearing that same half smirk he used to practice in the mirror when he thought I wasn't looking. For a second, the world tilted. Not from love, not from nostalgia, but from recognition. Seeing the ghost of who you used to be standing right in front of you can feel like being haunted. He saw me too. His expression froze, then flickered with something that wasn't quite guilt and wasn't quite pride. I felt Arthur's hand brush mine. "You okay?" I nodded, inhaling slowly. "Yeah, just old ghosts." We walked past him toward the drinks table. I didn't look back. But ghosts never stay quiet for long. Half an hour later, as I was refilling Arthur's glass, Harry appeared beside me. "Judy," he said softly, as if saying my name could still summon the version of me who would drop everything for him. I looked at him steady. "Harry." He gave a faint smile. "Didn't expect to see you here." "It's a public party," I said, reaching for the soda water. "Not your living room." He chuckled, pretending to take the joke lightly, but I could see the tension in his jaw. "So, that's him." He tilted his head toward Arthur, who was chatting with friends nearby. "Yes," I said simply. "He's different from what I imagined." "Good," I replied. "He's not like you." That shut him up for a moment. I could feel his pride deflate just slightly. But then he smiled again, the same smug, familiar smile. You upgraded fast. I turned to him, met his gaze head on. I didn't upgrade, Harry. I healed. The words came out effortlessly, calm but sharp enough to leave a mark. He blinked, thrown off balance. You really don't miss us at all. I studied him carefully. The man I once loved, the man who made me believe stability was a flaw. His face looked the same, but something about his eyes had changed. They were tired, searching for validation he'd never find. I miss who I thought you were, I said quietly. And I miss the version of myself who believed you could love without destroying what you touched. But no, I don't miss us. Because there was never really an us, Harry. There was me and you trying to find excitement at my expense. He swallowed hard, the tension in his throat visible. I made a mistake, he whispered. Everyone does. But you threw me away like I meant nothing. I tilted my head. No, Harry, you threw me away. I just didn't chase after you. For a second, I thought he might cry. But it wasn't sadness in his eyes. It was frustration. Anger, that deep ache of losing control over something he thought he owned. I hope he's everything you think he is, Harry said bitterly, glancing toward Arthur. I smiled. He is. Peaceful, loyal, emotionally grown. Everything you mocked me for wanting. I placed my glass down gently on the table and turned to leave. But just before walking away, I looked back once more, not out of longing, but to seal the moment shut. Goodbye, Harry, I said softly. For real this time. And then I walked away. When I reached Arthur, he didn't ask questions. He just smiled and handed me a plate of dessert. You look lighter, he said. Yeah, I replied. I just buried a ghost. He grinned. Then here's to resurrection. We clinked glasses, and for the rest of the night, I didn't look back once. Later, as the crowd thinned and the city shimmered below us, Arthur and I danced. Not the dramatic spotlight kind of dance, just slow swaying, two people breathing in sync. It felt safe, and for the first time I didn't flinch at that word. Because maybe safety wasn't the absence of passion, maybe it was the presence of peace. And as we left the rooftop that night, I realized something profound. Harry had mistaken my calm for emptiness. But calm isn't empty, it's earned. A week after the engagement party, life settled back into rhythm, slow, steady, undramatic. And that was the most beautiful thing about it. The mornings began with coffee and sunlight instead of tension. My laptop hummed softly as I worked from home, a candle burning nearby. I'd play quiet music, nothing emotional, just the kind that fills the silence without demanding attention. Peace had become my favorite sound. Then one morning, as I was checking emails from clients, a new message appeared. Subject line, "Can we talk? Sender Harry Cole." I stared at it for a long minute before opening it. Judy. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I messed up badly. I got lost chasing something that wasn't real. I thought I wanted freedom, but I just wanted attention. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. You were the only one who ever really cared about me. I still love you, even if I didn't show it right. Please, can we talk? Even just once, I miss you. Harry. There was no venom this time, no arrogance. Just words stripped of their armor. But even so, they didn't move me. Because behind the apology, I could still feel it, the undertone of self-pity, the desperate need to be absolved. He didn't want forgiveness. He wanted freedom from guilt. I hovered over the reply box for a few seconds. My fingers didn't even twitch. Then I archived the email, clicked mark as read, and went back to work. No rage, no tears, just silence, the kind that doesn't ache anymore. That night I went to Arthur's place. He'd made dinner, nothing fancy, just pasta, wine, and laughter. The kind of night that feels normal in the best possible way. At one point, he looked at me across the table and said, "You've got that look." What look? I asked, smiling. The one people get when they've finally stopped waiting for an apology. I paused, wine glass halfway to my lips. You can tell? He nodded. Yeah, it's in your shoulders. You're not holding anything up anymore. And he was right. I used to carry every version of Harry's disappointment, the quiet sighs, the backhanded compliments, the guilt trips disguised as love. I used to shrink myself to keep his ego comfortable. But not anymore. After dinner, we sat on the couch and Arthur put on a record. The music was slow, older than both of us, but it filled the space like a heartbeat. I leaned against him and whispered, "You know what's funny? He used to tell me I was too calm, that I didn't feel things deeply enough." Arthur smiled. People who mistake peace for emptiness are usually addicted to noise. I let out a quiet laugh. Yeah. He wanted chaos. I just wanted clarity. Did you get it? He asked softly. I looked at him, the steady kindness in his eyes, the way he didn't need to be loud to be noticed. I did, I said. He gave it to me when he walked out that door. Days turned into weeks, and though Harry never sent another message every now and then, I'd think about that email. Not because I missed him, but because it reminded me how far I'd come. It's strange how closure works. We think it comes from other people, the apology, the explanation, the promise that it won't happen again. But sometimes closure is realizing you no longer need any of it. Sometimes it's just waking up one morning, making coffee, and not thinking about them at all. Months later, I ran into Haley at a bookstore of all places. She looked different, tired, worn down in the way people do after mistaking chaos for passion too many times. She recognized me instantly. Her smile was small, uneasy. "You're Judy Wright." I nodded. "Yeah." She hesitated. I heard about what happened with Harry." "Yeah," I said simply. "We both survived." Her eyes softened, maybe in guilt, maybe in understanding. "He hasn't changed, you know." "I know," I said quietly. "That's why I did." We stood there for a moment, two women who had loved the same man for very different reasons, and learned from him in the same way. Then I smiled, wished her well, and walked out into the sunlight. That night, as I wrote in my journal, I found myself summarizing the entire chapter of Harry in one line. He wanted chaos, but I became the calm he'll never find again. And for the first time, that sentence didn't sound like triumph. It sounded like peace. My name is Patricia Blose. I'm 28 years old, and I used to believe that love was something you could build through patience and trust that if you gave enough, you'd eventually be chosen. Turns out love isn't always a promise. Sometimes it's just a lesson written in someone else's handwriting. When I met Leo, he wasn't the loudest in the room. That's what drew me in. He was calm, funny, in that understated way, the kind of man who could make a grocery run feel like a date. He'd brush my hair out of my face when I spoke, listen like what I said actually mattered. I thought I'd finally found something real, something still. For 2 years, we built what looked like peace. Dinner nights, inside jokes, weekends that blurred into each other. Our friends used to call us the married couple, but I think somewhere along the way that title started to scare him. The change came quietly. He started hiding his phone screen, keeping his messages face down. I'd catch flashes of names I didn't recognize, followed by his thumb moving too fast to pretend it was casual. When I asked about it, he'd sigh. "You're overthinking again, Patricia. You can't control every conversation I have." And I wanted to believe him. I really did. Because the truth is, I was tired of being the one who doubted while he played calm. I told myself that love meant giving the benefit of the doubt even when it hurt. Then came Riley's birthday party the night that rewired everything. Leo had been talking about it all week. "Everyone's going to be there," he'd said. "Diana's planning some surprise." Diana. That name had started showing up too often lately. She was the effortlessly charming type, bold laugh, constant touch, the kind of woman who made her presence feel like a performance. That night, Leo dressed up like it mattered. White shirt, rolled sleeves, cologne. I hadn't smelled since our anniversary. When I asked who he was trying to impress, he smirked. "Relax, you're coming too." He said it like it was a joke, but the laugh didn't reach his eyes. The party was packed, music, laughter, everyone drinking more than they should. I stuck close to Riley and the others while Leo drifted off into a sea of people. A few minutes later, I saw him across the room, Diana's hand on his arm, his head bent close to hers, both laughing like the rest of us had disappeared. For a second, I froze. Then, instinctively, I smiled at nothing. That's what women do when they don't want anyone to see them break, they smile. A friend, Naomi, leaned closer. "You okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was humiliated. I watched him all night. Every small touch, every whisper between them. He looked younger, freer, like I'd been the weight he'd just set down. Later in the kitchen, I found him pouring Diana another drink, his hand brushing hers. My voice came out steady, even though my chest was burning. "I'm heading home soon," I said. "Work tomorrow." He didn't even turn right away. "Already, it's barely midnight." "Yeah, I've been up since 5. You coming?" He looked at Diana, then back at me. "I'll catch a ride later. Don't be such a mom, Patricia." The word mom hit like a slap. Patronizing, dismissive, said with a smirk that told me I wasn't worth taking seriously. So I smiled again, the kind that hides pain behind grace. "Sure, have fun." I left quietly, not wanting to give him the satisfaction of a scene. The cab ride home was a blur of neon lights and replayed memories. Every I love you that had sounded so steady now felt rehearsed. When I got home, I sat on the couch staring at my phone. No messages, not a single one. I told myself he'd text soon, that maybe I'd overreacted, but the silence stretched. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2. By the time the sun came up, my phone was still blank. That's when I felt it, that dull ache of knowing someone's choice before they admit it. At 10:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. One message, 4 words. It just happened. I'm sorry. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I kept waiting for another text, something to explain, to make sense of it. But nothing came. Just those 4 words, small and cruel, like a door slamming shut. I typed one word back. Okay. Then I blocked his number, blocked his Instagram, his messages, his everything. And then I just sat there. No crying, no yelling. Just stillness. I looked around my apartment, our photos still framed on the shelf, the sweater he'd left draped over the chair, his toothbrush next to mine. Every trace of him looked foreign now. People talk about heartbreak like it's a storm, loud, chaotic, devastating. But the truth is, it's quiet. It's the sound of a message notification that doesn't come. It's the silence after a laugh you can still hear in your head. That afternoon, Naomi called. Her voice was hesitant. Patricia, I don't know how to say this, but Leo left the party with Diana last night. I let out a slow breath. Yeah, I said softly. I figured. Everyone's talking about it. She's telling people it just happened. Like it was a mistake. Let her, I said. Mistakes have a funny way of repeating themselves. After we hung up, I went through my photos. The vacations, the selfies, the blurry coffee shop pictures. Every moment that once felt eternal. Delete, delete, delete. Not out of anger, out of clarity. When the screen finally went black, I whispered to myself. He left a party with her. I left his life with peace. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept without refreshing my phone. And when I woke up the next morning, I didn't check for messages. I didn't hope. I didn't hurt. I just breathed. Because sometimes the end doesn't sound like goodbye. It sounds like silence. And silence, when you've been lied to long enough, feels like freedom. There's a strange kind of quiet that follows betrayal. It's not peace, not yet. It's more like when a storm has passed and the air still smells like lightning. You can breathe, but every inhale still burns. That first week without Leo felt like detox. Every morning my fingers would twitch toward my phone muscle memory, reaching for what was no longer there. His messages gone, his name erased. But my body hadn't caught up yet. It still expected him. Deleting him from my phone was easy. Deleting him from my thoughts was war. I spent hours cleaning my apartment as if scrubbing the surfaces could erase his voice from the walls. His cologne still lingered in the hallway, the ghost of something I used to find comforting. Now it just made me nauseous. When I threw away the toothbrush he left behind, I stared at it for a full minute before dropping it in the trash. Not because I missed him, but because I hated how small it felt, the end of 2 years reduced to a cheap plastic reminder. The worst part wasn't missing him. It was missing who I thought he was. By the second week, the silence started to shift. That's when the whispers began, screenshots, tags, updates I never asked for. A mutual friend, Naomi, sent me a screenshot one morning. Leo and Diana were tagged at a brunch place downtown. All smiles, the caption reading, "New beginnings are scary, but worth it." The post had over 200 likes. My stomach sank, not from jealousy, from disgust. He looked so proud of himself, like betrayal was an achievement, like happiness could be rebuilt from someone else's wreckage. Naomi called a few minutes later. "I didn't want to show you," she said softly, "but I thought you'd rather see than hear it from someone else." "It's fine," I said. "People post what they need to believe." "He looks different," she murmured, "like he's performing." "That's all he ever did," I replied. I told her I was done looking, and I meant it, at least until I opened Instagram that night. Even though I'd blocked him, his reflection leaked through. Someone's tag story, a mutual's repost. Leo and Diana at a bar, dancing her lipstick, smudged his hands on her waist. The comments were full of heart emojis. Mine stayed empty. I stared for a long time, not out of longing, but because I couldn't recognize the man in the photo. He looked like a stranger wearing Leo's face. Work helped. For a while. I threw myself into projects, staying late, volunteering for every deadline. Coworkers joked that I'd become married to my job. They didn't know the truth. I was avoiding coming home to silence. One night around 11 p.m., I found myself scrolling again, not through his profile, but through our old texts I'd screenshotted before deleting him. Messages from when things were still good. You make me want to be better. You're the only calm I've ever known. I can't imagine life without you. Funny how people can write poetry one month and betrayal the next. I deleted the folder, this time for real. Weeks passed. The gossip didn't. Mutual friends would drop casual mentions. Oh, I ran into Leo and Diana last night, or they seem really happy. I'd nod, smile, and change the subject. But it chipped away at me, that constant reminder that he was thriving while I was relearning how to breathe. One evening, Riley, the same friend whose party started all this, called me out of nowhere. Hey, just checking on you. Haven't seen you around. I'm fine, I said. You sure? Because I saw them last night. I wanted to punch him. Don't, I said. He's not worth the bruise. We laughed, but it didn't feel funny. The truth is, I wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. That night, I sat by the window lights off City humming outside, and I whispered to myself, he's living the life I thought we'd share. Then I paused, realizing something. He wasn't, because I would never have built something that shallow. By the next month, the ache dulled into something else, acceptance maybe. I started running in the mornings, joined a yoga class, stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. Just when I started to feel free, Leo's face found its way back to me in a sponsored post of all things. A photo of him and Diana at the same beach we once visited. Same pose, same angle. Her wearing the sunglasses I'd bought him for his birthday. The caption read, "Sometimes love is about timing." I laughed loud and bitter. Timing. As if betrayal was just a scheduling error. It was that night I decided to delete social media altogether. Every platform. Gone. I didn't announce it. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I just disappeared. The next morning, my phone stayed silent. No notifications, no updates, no echoes of him. It felt terrifying at first, like erasing the last tether between me and the world. But then, something unexpected happened. By afternoon, I felt light, like a fog had lifted. For the first time in months, my reflection in the mirror looked like someone I recognized. My eyes weren't red from crying. My skin wasn't dull from exhaustion. There was still pain, yes, but it was quieter now, less sharp, almost gentle. I made tea, opened my window, and watched the city breathe. And for the first time since Leo's message, I felt a flicker of something that almost scared me peace. Because sometimes healing isn't fireworks or revelation. It's silence. It's deleting the past without looking back. It's realizing that you can miss someone and still be grateful they're gone. That night before bed, I wrote one sentence in my journal. You don't unlove someone by blocking them. You just give your pain a room to breathe. Then I turned off my light, laid back, and slept soundly. No phone on the nightstand, no ghost in my chest, just the quiet. It had been almost 3 months since Leo's text those 4 words that cracked something open in me and let all the light out. I wasn't over it, but I was past the crying part, past the bargaining and the what-ifs, until Karma decided to log in. It started on a Thursday night. I was at the gym earbuds and zoning out to some upbeat playlist that was supposed to make me feel powerful, but mostly just drowned out the noise in my head. My phone buzzed on the treadmill tray. 3 missed calls from Naomi, then a 4th, and a message that read, "Check Dylan's post, now." My stomach tightened. I opened Instagram. The first thing I saw was Leo's face. He was sitting at a bar alone, a drink in hand. The caption wasn't subtle. Lesson learned, if they cheat with you, they'll cheat on you. I froze mid-stride. The comments section was a wildfire, half laughing, half pretending to be shocked. The post was barely an hour old, but the damage was already done. Screenshots were flying everywhere. I didn't comment. I didn't even like it. I just locked my phone and finished my workout because I knew what came next, the downfall. By the next morning, the story had spread. Apparently, Leo and Diana had imploded spectacularly. Something about him flirting with a woman from his gym DMs discovered a shouting match in the parking lot. Someone filmed it. Naomi sent me the video even though I told her not to. I watched it once. Diana was standing in front of Leo's building, mascara streaked down her face, screaming. You said I was different, while he laughed and filmed her with his phone. The video made me sick, not because of her humiliation, but because I recognized that tone, that wild disbelief. I'd once been the woman begging him to look me in the eye. I didn't feel happy watching it, not even vindicated, just done. I deleted the video immediately, then went for a walk. The air felt heavy, like the city itself was holding its breath. Karma doesn't always come roaring. Sometimes it arrives quietly wrapped in irony. I found myself whispering under my breath. You didn't have to destroy him, Patricia. He did that all by himself. Over the next few days, Leo's online life collapsed like a poorly built stage set. All the couple photos disappeared. His account went private. His posts about new beginnings were gone. Mutual friends started sending me updates without asking if I wanted them. He's been telling people she was too emotional. They say he's been staying with his cousin now. Diana's deleted everything. It's like they never existed. Each message was laced with quiet satisfaction, like everyone had been waiting for the curtain to fall. But I didn't reply, because the truth was I didn't care anymore. A few days later, I ran into Riley at a cafe. The same Riley whose birthday party had started all of this. He looked uneasy when he spotted me. "Hey," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You've heard about all that?" "Yeah," I said, stirring my coffee. "Hard to miss. You're not going to lie, you're handling this way better than most people would." "Maybe that's the point," I said. "I'm not most people." He laughed nervously. "Diana's a mess. Everyone's avoiding Leo now." "Guess they finally saw what you meant." I looked out the window. I didn't need them to. I just needed to stop proving it. That night, I scrolled through my phone one last time. Not to check on him, but to remind myself how far I'd come. I found an old note I'd written months before when everything still hurt. "He'll regret it someday. He'll know what he lost." I deleted that too, because it no longer mattered if he did. Sometimes healing isn't about waiting for someone's apology. It's realizing you no longer need it. A week later, Naomi called again. "You won't believe this," she said between laughs. Leo posted some quote about self-growth and accountability. Everyone's dragging him in the comments. "What's the quote?" I asked. Something like, "People change when they lose what they took for granted." I smiled. Maybe he's learning. "Do you believe that?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I believe karma keeps good notes." That night, I dreamed of the beach we once went to. Except this time I was standing there alone, watching the tide erase every footprint he'd ever left beside mine. When I woke up, I didn't cry. I didn't check my phone. I just stretched, made coffee, and smiled. Because the thing about karma is, it doesn't ask for your permission. It just shows up right on time. And for the first time since he left, I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted distance. Months later, I ran into one of Leo's old friends at the grocery store. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me shifting his cart awkwardly. "Patricia, hey, I heard about everything that happened with Leo and Diana. Yeah, I just wanted to say, you dodged a bullet. Everyone sees it now." "Took them long enough," I said with a small laugh. He smiled, then added quietly, "He's been different, not in a good way. Drinks too much, blames everyone else. He keeps saying you're the one person who never fought dirty." That stopped me. Not because I cared, but because it was true. I never fought dirty. I never had to. Silence was the sharpest weapon I ever used. I nodded, thanked him, and walked away. In the parking lot, I looked up at the sky, exhaled, and whispered, "Karma posts first, but peace always gets the final word." By the time Leo's apology found its way to me, I'd already stopped waiting for one. It started subtly a message request from a name I didn't recognize, Caleb H. No profile photo, no posts, just a single message. "I know you probably hate me, but please hear me out." I didn't need to. The rhythm of those words, the guilt folded inside them, it was Leo's voice hiding behind someone else's name. I blocked it. Within a day, another account appeared. Then another. Each one more desperate than the last. The tone shifted with each attempt: regret, self-pity, guilt, anger. One message read, "I'm sorry, Patricia, I was stupid. You didn't deserve any of that." The next one said, "You think you're perfect, you're not. You just gave up too fast." I stared at that one for a long moment before blocking it too. Because in that sentence, he told me everything I'd ever needed to know, that he still thought love was something to win, not something to nurture. It didn't take long for our mutual friends to get pulled into his orbit. Naomi called first, her voice soft, hesitant. "He's been reaching out," she said, "to a lot of people, asking about you." "What does he want? Closure, I think. Or forgiveness. Maybe both." "He already got closure," I said. "It came with a period and a block button." She was quiet for a second before whispering, "You sound stronger now." "No," I said, "just tired of performing weakness." The following week, Riley texted me, "Hey, just a heads up. Leo's going to be at the get-together next weekend. I didn't invite him." "Naomi did. You okay with that?" I hesitated, staring at the message. I was okay, but okay didn't mean comfortable. "I'll come," I replied. "I don't hide anymore." Still, the thought of seeing him again after months of silence sent a low hum of anxiety through my chest. Not because I wanted him back, because I didn't, and that somehow felt heavier. The night of the gathering, I took my time getting ready, not to impress anyone, just to remind myself that I still could. A soft cream blouse, minimal makeup, the faintest trace of perfume I used to love, but had stopped wearing because it reminded me of him. When I arrived, the air was warm, the sound of laughter spilling through the open patio doors. I could hear his voice before I saw him, that familiar cadence that used to make me feel seen. He was by the grill, beer in hand, laughing at something Riley said. But when our eyes met, the sound died. For a moment, it was like no one else existed. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. The confidence that used to draw every gaze had dulled into something brittle. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but I turned away first. Because not every silence is weakness, some are survival. Halfway through the night, Naomi nudged me. "He keeps looking over," she whispered. "Let him," I said. "It's the least he's earned." Later, as I stood near the kitchen refilling my drink, I heard his voice behind me. "Patricia." Just my name. No apology yet, no excuses. Just the sound of him testing if he still had permission to say it. I turned slowly. "Hi." He looked unsure, like the ground beneath him wasn't solid anymore. "You look good," he said. "So do you," I replied, because lying was easier than reopening anything real. He shifted, rubbed the back of his neck. "I've tried reaching out. I wanted to explain, you already did," I interrupted softly, with 4 words. He blinked, realizing. It just happened. "I made mistakes," he said quickly. "I know that. But everything that happened after, I didn't think it would destroy everything. You didn't think I corrected. That was the problem." He swallowed, eyes flicking away. "I miss what we had. You miss who I was when I still believed you," I said. "That version of me doesn't exist anymore." Silence stretched between us, not awkward, just honest. He sighed, voice breaking slightly. "You really won't even talk to me. Everyone's turned against me. I've lost everything. That's not my fault," I said quietly. "You burned the bridge. I just stopped standing on it." He opened his mouth again, but I shook my head. "Don't apologize because you're lonely, Leo. Apologize when you understand." And then I walked away. Naomi found me outside later, sitting alone under the porch light. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "For the first time, I actually am." I looked back through the window, Leo still standing there, staring at the floor. And for the first time, I didn't feel pity. Just distance, the healthy kind. That night after I got home, there was one new message request waiting for me. No profile picture, no name, just a single sentence. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you're happy." I didn't reply. Because I was. Not in the loud, cinematic way people post about, but in the quiet way you only recognize after surviving chaos. I closed the message, put my phone face down, and turned off the light. As I lay there, I realized something simple, something final. Silence isn't about punishing someone. It's about reclaiming yourself. And in that silence, I slept without dreams. By the time I saw Leo again, it wasn't heartbreak I felt. It was distance, the kind you can't measure in miles, only in growth. Months had passed since that night at Riley's house. The messages had stopped. The fake accounts had gone quiet. Even the whispers from friends had faded into silence. Life had rearranged itself around the absence of him. I'd started painting again. I went on hikes, joined a book club, even said yes to spontaneous plans, things I'd forgotten how to do when my world revolved around someone else's moods. Peace had become my new routine. And then one ordinary Saturday, the universe decided to test it. Riley's text came in that morning. "Barbecue at mine tonight. Chill, small crowd. You should come." I almost said no. I'd grown comfortable avoiding these gatherings, too many shared faces, too many ghosts. But something in me whispered, "You're not running anymore." So I said yes. When I arrived, the evening was warm, the scent of grilled food hanging in the air, laughter spilling across the backyard. I greeted everyone, hugged, Naomi grabbed a drink, and that's when I saw him. Leo, standing near the fence, half in shadow, half pretending to be fine. He looked thinner. His hair was longer, his posture smaller, but the biggest difference was in his eyes. They weren't defiant anymore. They were tired. For a moment, our gazes met, brief, unintentional. I gave a polite nod and turned away. I wasn't cold, I was calm. There's a difference. The night moved on. Conversations flowed around me, light and easy. Every once in a while, I'd catch Leo watching, not in longing, but in guilt. Naomi leaned close and whispered, "He's been quiet all night. I think he came just to see you. Then he'll leave disappointed," I said with a small smile. By the time people started leaving, the sky had turned deep blue. The crowd thinned until only a few of us were left, Riley, Naomi, and Leo, lingering like a shadow that refused to fade. I excused myself to grab my jacket from inside. As I stepped back out, I heard it his voice. Patricia. That same tone again. Hesitant, uncertain, human. I turned slowly, meeting his gaze under the dim porch light. Hi, I said simply. He stepped closer, hands shoved into his pockets. Can we talk just for a minute? Sure, I said. 1 minute. He took a deep breath. I don't even know where to start, he said. Everything's been falling apart. Diana's gone. My job? I messed that up too. And everywhere I go, people look at me differently. I stayed silent, waiting. I've had time to think, he continued. About us. About how good it was, how much I ruined. I could hear the regret in his voice, but it wasn't enough to soften me. Because regret, after destruction, isn't love. It's memory. Trying to rewrite history. I was stupid, he said. I thought you'd always be there. I thought I could come back whenever I wanted, and you'd still. Forgive you, I interrupted gently. You thought wrong. He blinked, taken aback by the calmness in my tone. You're angry. I get it. I'm not angry, I said. If I was, you'd still have power. What I feel now, it's just distance. He looked down, voice shaking slightly. You really mean that? Yes, I said. I don't hate you, Leo. I just don't carry you anymore. He nodded slowly, his eyes glossy under the light. I wanted to say I'm sorry, he whispered. I know I said softly. But some apologies come after the part where they matter. He exhaled shakily as if the weight of the conversation pressed on his ribs. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, he said. And I didn't realize it until too late. For a moment I almost pitied him. But pity is not love, and forgiveness is not a reunion. You didn't lose me because you made a mistake, I said. You lost me because you kept choosing the same mistake until I stopped waiting for you to change. He looked at me like he wanted to say more, but the words never came. So I smiled, not out of cruelty, but closure. Take care of yourself, I said quietly. Then I walked away. As I stepped out into the street, the night felt strangely still. No music, no voices, just the hum of crickets and the echo of my own footsteps. I didn't look back. Because closure doesn't always come from understanding someone else. Sometimes it's just knowing when to stop explaining yourself. When I reached my car, I took one last breath of that heavy summer air, the kind that smells like endings. And I whispered to the quiet. He left a party saying it just happened. And when I finally stopped waiting to understand him, peace just happened. I smiled then, not the polite one I used to wear to hide pain, a real one, soft and certain. Because for the first time in years, my story didn't revolve around him. It revolved around me. It's been nearly a year since Leo's name stopped echoing in my life. And sometimes when people ask if I've moved on, I don't know how to answer. Because moving on sounds like forgetting, and I didn't forget. I just stopped bleeding. My days look different now. Mornings begin with sunlight instead of anxiety. I make coffee without checking my phone first. The quiet that used to terrify me now feels sacred. I paint again messy, imperfect pieces that no one will ever see. It's not about art. It's about reclaiming color in a life that used to be grayscale. Sometimes Naomi visits, brings pastries, and updates about our old circle. I always listen with a smile, but inside those stories feel like they belong to another lifetime. Last week she mentioned casually, Leo moved out of the city. I just nodded. No sting, no curiosity, just nothing. And that nothing felt like peace. One evening, I walked to the same beach Leo and I used to visit, the one that had been off limits in my mind for so long. The waves sounded the same, but everything else had changed. I sat in the sand until sunset, letting the wind sting my cheeks. And for the first time, I didn't replay the past. I didn't imagine him next to me. I didn't search for meaning in the water. I just existed. Healing doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It sneaks in quietly in the way your heart doesn't race when their name appears, in the way old photos stop hurting, in the way laughter returns without guilt. I used to think I needed closure from him, an explanation, a reason, an apology, wrapped in sincerity. But now I understand closure was never something he could give. It was something I had to grow into. And I did. Sometimes I wonder what I'd say if I saw him again. Would I be polite? Cold and different? The truth is, I don't think I'd say anything. Because silence was the first language I learned after him, and it taught me everything words never could. A few nights ago, I was scrolling through my journal, the one I kept during those first weeks after the breakup. One entry stopped me cold. It said, "If I ever heal, I hope I still remember what it felt like to hurt. So I never take peace for granted." I smiled reading it, because I do remember. And that's why peace feels like a miracle. So no, I haven't moved on. I've moved forward slowly, deliberately, quietly. And maybe that's enough. Because moving on sounds like running from the past. Moving forward means carrying what you've learned and walking anyway. When people ask what happened with Leo, I just say, he was a lesson that arrived loud and left quietly. And when they ask if I'd do it all again, I say yes, because it led me here, to myself. Sometimes closure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from a quiet morning months later when you realize you haven't thought about them once and the silence feels full instead of empty. He left a party saying, "It just happened." But so did my healing. It just happened the moment I stopped chasing love that never chased me back.